Hi guys, welcome to this video and welcome to this beast, which is the 747-400 recently released by iFLY. Now, this video is the first in a series I'm going to do in terms of, it's called the FMC Challenge, and this is the first aircraft we're going to do it with. Now, what is the FMC Challenge? Well, the FMC Challenge is where I'm going to fly a number of aircraft around the same route, and we're going to have a look at their FMCs and how well or otherwise they perform. And I suppose the fundamental thing is that we've all bought add-ons where it doesn't do what it says on the tin, and we end up with that disappointing factor of, well, I thought it might do this, but it doesn't. Now, manufacturers and developers and designers, when they ultimately release their product, in terms of the advertising, we often see phrases like advanced FMC, realistic FMC, custom coded FMC. And if I'm honest, I haven't got a clue what those phrases, what the intention is, what they're trying to tell me with those. I don't know how well modelled the FMC is or to what depth. And that is the fundamental purpose of this series. Now, I'm not going to go into the infinite minutiae of each FMC to see if every single FMC can handle every single requirement or demand of it. So what I've got is a route in which it's going to combine the general requirements of an FMC. So it'll be a departure via a SID, it will be following basic routings and so on, including things like VNAV and LNAV profiles. However, what we're also going to do is we're going to have a number of slightly more advanced features, and we're just going to test and see if particular FMCs can do those features and if not. And examples would be, quite a lot of them will probably be able to do present position holds. However, some may also be able to do things like route offsets or holding off route or whatever it may be, beam points for example. So there's a number of features that maybe these FMSs or FMCs, I should say, can do. So the whole purpose of this is to investigate a combination of the depth and the reality in a broad context for each add-on aircraft that we look at. Now, with regards to that, as I say, it's not going to be a fully comprehensive look at every single feature of every single FMC, because to do that would be ridiculous in terms of time and availability. All I want to do is get something that's a little bit more comprehensive than just a phrase such as advanced FMC. Because as a customer, I don't mind if there's a concession by the developers if they don't implement something, either because they haven't got the resources to, or because they just don't think it's a feature that most simmers would actually worry too much about. That's not a problem as long as I'm aware of it. The last thing I want to have is one of the two circumstances where either I buy a product thinking it's more capable than it is, or I buy a product where it does have the advertised features, it's just they're full of bugs and so the aircraft won't do what it's supposed to do. And that really is the premise of this series. So this is the first aircraft we're going to look at. Let's have a look at the route. So in order to assess an FMC, what we need is a route, and this is going to be the fairly standardized route that we're going to use in terms of assessing FMCs for all sorts of add-ons and developers. Now, the first thing before we go any further, you can see up here there is a web address. This is skyvector.com. It's a really useful site, and I would say 95 to 98% of the facilities are absolutely free, and you do not need to register. Here is the warning, guys. There's a sign-in login up here. In terms of signing in, if you sign in, it will ask you to generate an account. If you generate an account, you will also get big real-world warnings. This button here is not active unless you are signed in. Good reason for it. If you were to use it and file a flight plan, you are filing it in the real-world system. So, as a sim user, do not, under any circumstances, in my opinion, register an account and sign in. That way, you cannot accidentally file anything in the system. As I say, if you file it in the system, it's the real world system, and you will get prosecuted for filing it if you do not intend to fly it. And obviously, unless your computer can take you to flight level 210, you ain't flying it. So big warning there, guys. Do not sign in, do not register an account unless you're a real world pilot and you intend to use it to fly routes in terms of filing flight plans. Critical bit. You will see this used by a lot of sim pilots as a website. It's a great website. It's got lots and lots of facilities available to you. So for example, you can have the Navlog facility. Any facilities that need you to sign in with a registered account, it will not let you do them unless you are signed in. So my advice, and I suggest you do heed it, is never sign in or generate an account as a sim pilot. That way you cannot get yourselves into trouble. So having gone through the misery of all of that, what we're going to do now is go through the route itself. Now you can see the route is up here. It's quite a nice route in terms of enabling me to assess FMCs, and we'll run through it very briefly. London Gatwick to Kennet is a SID. A SID allows us to assess the VNAV profile and the LNAV profile. It's got quite a tight turn from 08 right, which is what we're going to use, back towards the west. It's also got two steps in terms of climbs. It's got a climb to 3,000 feet initially with a hard constraint there, not at or above 3,000, but a hard constraint of 3,000, and another hard constraint of 4,000. So what we can assess is its ability to manage constraints. In addition, there are points within it where it will have to interpolate its anticipated altitude for a particular point. So not every point has a constraint applied to it. SID takes us to Kennet, then we've got Kennet out to following the November 14 to Octad. Now, being a route out here, one of the things we can do is we can start to use our straight line routes in terms of assessing the facilities available in the FMC, and we've got another one going 52 miles up here. This allows us, nice long legs, to practice or check things like route offsets. Now, route offset is the Boeing terminology, but basically what it means is, imagine we had a big blob of weather here that we wanted to avoid particularly nasty CBs, cumulonimbus, and we wanted to offset our route. Route offset in the Boeing allows you to come out a certain distance and then parallel your existing route, and it will parallel it until a number of sort of triggers tell it to go back to its normal route, be it a direct intercept or something of that nature. Now, of course, the other things here is it affords us the ability to do direct intercepts. So we could go to Ugnus here and then do a direct intercept up to Telba. Likewise, the dog legs down here afford us the ability to do that. So we've got the ability now to include route offsets and also direct intercepts. Obviously, being long legs as well here, we have the ability to do present position holds to see if it can do a holding pattern at present position. We also have a large number of positions around here, for example Pedig over here, where once we've made this turn we can do what's called an off-track hold. Basically what it means is if ATC had an issue over here, they would be able to send you to an off-track hold to hold here, and you would be able to hold until ATC gave you further directions. And it may be that they do direct intercept Honolulu, it may be that you do an intercept back onto your original airway. But that obviously means that we can test off-route holds, which is great. Continuing down the route, obviously you've got normal holds. Honolulu has a normal holding pattern available at it in terms of beacon holding, which is great. Then also we can check another thing I haven't mentioned thus far. You have a beam point. So if you're going to a location, you can request a beam point. So for example, Chase here, you can put in an individual fix, a single fix, not on your route, and you will then be able to request a beam point. You can do that with an individual point or location. This bit here is interesting. I'm just going to move this out of the way. You can see a lot of times we do our flight plans using these bits, intersections. Now what we have here is an airway to airway crossing point. Boeing flight plans, Boeing FMCs, I'm not quite so sure about Airbus, but I'm almost certain they'll be able to do the same thing in real life. You can do an airway to airway intersection without a reporting point or without an intersection point in the FMC. What you do is you put your first line will be this outbound leg. So you'll have, from this origin, you will then have 091 as your outbound leg, but you will not have a destination point in that leg. You will then have your following line will be your inbound airway here, the one down to Daventry, and you will have your destination point. So you'll have two lines. The first one won't have a destination, the second line won't have an origin, and the system is clever enough that it can figure out, well, if you want that airway and that airway in that configuration, there must be a point here, and I'll generate the point, and it can automatically put its own point in. That is a real toughie for a flight sim FMC or FMS to generate, so I don't expect many will be able to do that. Of course, if it can't do that in the route, we can always put a direct to and just make sure that the direct to facility works, and that's not a problem there. So then we come down a few dog legs of tight little airways here, quite short legs, 14 miles or so between the various legs, brings us up round to here. Now, we are not doing a star. We are going to do an ILS approach to Cambridge, but we are not doing a star. We're going to do an ILS approach to the westerly runway. Now, with that in mind, why are we not doing a star? Well, it's fairly safe to say that if an FMC, it's not exclusive, but it's fairly safe to say that if an FMC can do a SID correctly, it can probably do the star correctly, certainly in terms of VNAV. However, what this then affords us to do is to pre-position for the ILS approach for Cambridge, which is a DME arc. So the DME arc needs to be manually programmed in. If you go to the ILS for this thing, the ILS chart and the FMC entry for an ILS for this, it will give you the runway details, but it won't give you a DME arc. The reason it won't give you a DM arc is there's no designated start position for it, because you're not coming off an airway for it. It is simply a case of if you're coming from the northwest, it will give you the range for the DME arc that you need to fly around in order to position for the ILS. What that means is it affords us the joy of having to manually input a DME arc, and we will see how our FMCs get on with that. Some will be able to do it, some will not. But as I say, the key here is to just try and assess some of the more significant features that we may need to do as sim aircrew of our sim aircraft. So it may be that you come down and you have to do a recovery, and for whatever reason ATC have moved you away from a star, and what we're doing is simulating when you get own navigation back to join the DME arc for Cambridge. So all things told, that's our route. That's what we're going to do as a fairly standardised route between the various FMCs as we go, and we'll see how they all manage that. Just to very, very briefly mention this is the Big Boeing FMC's user guide. This has been one of my reference documents for the videos. You can see it's written by a guy called Bill Bulfer and Skeet Gifford. It is not a cheap book, it's £45, and it's 300 pages of FMC goodness. It doesn't discuss anything other than the FMC and the FMC's link to the MCP, and it only does it for these four aircraft, the 747 through to the 777. The reason it covers these four aircraft is because they all use the same FMC. They all use the Honeywell FMC, whereas the 737 uses the Smiths, for example, but they all use the Honeywell in these four models. And you can see it mentions specifically the PIP, the PIP and the Pegasus. There's also a non-PIP version which predates these. It is mentioned in this book. However, it's by far and away a lesser cousin to the remaining two. As I say, great cure for insomnia. It's actually quite a detailed and heavy read in some respects, but it's really useful for what we're doing here. So I don't profess that anyone goes out to buy this. It's £45 plus post and packing, and as I say, all it is 300 pages of FMC goodness. It covers a lot of the advanced techniques. It covers all the advanced techniques. We are not going to work through this systematically. As I say, we're just going to cover a few key points. So let's get on with the flying. So right, let's get cracking with the FMC. You can see this is the initial startup position. It still wants its IRS position, so we can go to here. We can then go to ident, and you can see the ident page comes up. This little block down here, by the way, is related to this. So you can see it's got January the 7th till February the 3rd, 2016. When it says JEP, it means it's using the Jeppesen Jeppesen Air Rack, and 1601 means it's revision 1 of 2016. So always worthwhile making sure that that's in date. If we go to the POS init, it's because it wants the IRS position. Always take the GPS, because the GPS is where the aircraft is. If I put in the, let's just clear that, if I put in Echo Golf Kilo Kilo, which is our reference airport, you'll see that the position here is different by a, 1.3. The reason being is that this is a nominated point somewhere in the airfield for which the reference is taken for all of the measurements relating to the airfield, GPS databases, that kind of thing. Where we're actually at in this case is the threshold of the runway, and you can see it's 1.3 miles away. So with that in mind, what we do is take a GPS position and chuck that in there because it's more accurate. Moving on to the route, normally your Echo Golf Kilo Kilo from the previous page would be pre-populated there. Slight difference between this and the real aircraft. However, we're going to Echo Golf Sierra Charlie, which is Cambridge. Going to be a little bit of a small runway for us, but we'll have a bit of fun there. Departure and arrival, by the way, I've noticed a little thing. Fix switch here and hold, they're a bit blurry this close in. Others are fairly crystal clear, but I don't know why that is, whether it's my system or not. Route departing 08 right, we want the next page. Kennet 3 Papa is what we're going, and then the route we're going to go on to next page. It's the November 14 initially. We're going to Octad, which is Oscar, where's Kilo? Kilo, Tango, Alpha, Delta, which is all good and well. Then we're going to go direct to Telba, so we'll just make sure that it can take direct in the flight path, in the flight plan. And funny old thing, yes it can. From Telba we're going on the Papa 18, and that's going to Staffa, S-T-A-F-A. From Staffa we're going on the Lima 8 to Honolulu, and then we're going to, as I say, Honolulu. Now, go on to the next page for a good reason. If I go up here, let me see, let's just go on to where's legs gone? I can't see it from here. Let's go on to legs, and on this one we can go push to here, and we'll just zoom out a bit. Now you can see we've started putting in our route, which isn't a massive problem. Let's get that out, bring it up here so we can see it a little bit better. So it started putting in our routes. I'm going to step through what we've got so far. You can also see it's put in the altitudes. These are the predicted altitudes, which is these are the limit altitudes at each of these points. 3,000 where it hasn't got A, so that's 1210 at or above 1210, at or above 2,500. 3,000 feet is not at or above, it's just at. Same with 4,000 feet. These are the steps in the VNAV I was describing in the intro bit. So we step through, and you can see it follows the route nicely, get all the way up to Staffa, we come back down to Honolulu. Now if you remember with Honolulu, this is the one where we were going to do the two airways and see if we could do an airway intersection without there being a single point. So in essence we're not going to follow an airway to an intersection point, which is a reporting point or a defined point. You know, for example, Octad was a defined point, 5 letters normally, or 3 for a VOR. However, we haven't got that point, so we were going to do our two airways. So I'll show you how we should be able to do it. There's an airway that goes this way and an airway that goes that way, and there's a crossover point, but there's no actual sort of named position there. The system should be able to do it as an airway to airway intersection. So what we'll do is we'll go back to route, because you enter it in the route page. We'll go to next. So this is where we've got to, Honolulu down here. So if I go on to next page, I should be able to put in the first airway, and the first airway is the, let me just have a look over here onto my other screen. The first airway is the Papa 155. So let's come over here, Papa 155. Bush, not a problem, because the Papa 155 passes through Honolulu, so it's got an origin for our route. What it hasn't got is a destination, a termination for this airway. Shouldn't matter in real life, because what we can then do is we should be able to take the Mike 605, Mike 605, and put it in there, and it should go, well hang on a minute, if you want the airway that's here and you want the airway that's here, that's fine. What I'll do is I'll just generate a point. So it's just not doing that. Let's try it another way and see if it can do it this way. The Mike 605, where we're coming off that is Daventry. So let's put Daventry, Delta Tango Yankee, and let's see if that does anything. Now it's got direct to Daventry, which is no use. Let's try what happens if we put Mike 605 there. No, it's just not having it, whichever way. The first route I tried, the first way I tried it with the two airways is the correct route. I just thought I'd try it and see if there is anything else that we can do to try and encourage it to do what we want. Unfortunately, there is not. So let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that, because what we now have to do is do a workaround, which means we're going to have to put our own fix in. So next page, we get to Honolulu at the end. What we're going to do now is a point bearing distance. Now point bearing distance is a common thing to be doing, so let's just step through till we get here. Point bearing distance. This is our point, so we're going to put Hotel Oscar November. We want a bearing, which I know from the charts is 091, and we want a distance, which is /13. put that in, boom. Now let's just zoom out a little bit because we've only got 10 miles range. You can see this is our route coming down. This is where the airway is, the Papa 155. All we've done is we've got a manual routing in here. Of course, the issue now is this is a manually entered waypoint. It's not recognised by the system as being on the airway. The airway is here, the Mike 605. It just doesn't recognise it. So what we then do is we go back to our route, go to the end of our route, and we just go direct to Daventry, Delta Tango Yankee. Bosh, and you can see it's put that dog leg in that we were after in the first place. So from Daventry we are following the Mike 189. So it's the Mike 189 in the route. That is taking us to Olney, Oscar Lima, November Echo Yankee. Bosh, that goes in. From Olney we're going to follow the Papa 166, Papa 166. That takes us to Abanto, I believe. Bravo Alpha November Tango Oscar. Bosh. That's all very well and good, and you can see our little dog-leggy route that we've got down here. Then we go on to the Papa 155 from earlier. We're just dog-legging around to make it interesting, and that should take us to Sivda, Sierra India Victor Delta Alpha. Bosh. So that's most of our routing. What we are now going to do is we're going to go to our departures and arrivals. We're going to go to the arrivals, and what we want is the ILS for 2-3. Now you can see it's got the extended centerline and the fixes. We are actually going to do our DME arc. Let's just bring the range down a little bit. We're going to do a manually entered DME arc. So how do you do that? How do you get your manually entered DME arc? Not a problem. What I need to do is just take that out of there, and I'll activate where we're at so far and execute it, and that puts our route into magenta. So manually enter DME arc, go to our legs page, go to the end of our route, which is here, and what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to list enter basically the waypoints manually. There's no easier way that I can find of doing this to manually enter a DME arc other than to do a list of point bearing distance waypoints. So a point bearing distance waypoint, again, India Charlie Mike Golf, is our reference for it, our point. You'll notice it's got 4 letters. It's got 4 letters because it's actually an ILS beacon, or an ILS localizer I should say. India Charlie Mike Golf is the identifier for it. The clever thing about an FMC is it doesn't actually need to be on the localizer to know what that is. It just recognises, if you like, that is the terminal point of the ILS, and so it's a point in space. It's a point in the world that it can recognise. And from there, the first point we're going to do is we're going to do out on a radial of 300 from that, and we're going to do it at 10.2. Now, it's that one there. Now actually, I'll just call this up so I can describe it. The actual DME arc is 10 miles. The advice from the good book is to do it at something like 10.2. The reason being, if you imagine this is a 10 mile DME arc. If I have 10 miles here and 10 miles here, the system draws a straight line between the two, because this isn't a star, this isn't a published star approach, so the system draws a straight line between the two, and if you follow it, what it does is little turn, straight line, little turn, straight line, little turn, straight line, and so on and so forth. So by doing 10.2, you go slightly outside of the arc, there and there, and when you draw the straight line, it kind of averages it a little bit more. So that's why they recommend that. However, we've got to program the rest of this, so India Charlie Mike Golf 320 at 10.2. That goes in there, which is that one. Next page, India Charlie Mike Golf. This time it's 340 at 10.2. Bosh, Bosh, India Charlie Mike Golf. This time it's going to be 000 at 10.2. And you can see this is quite a laborious process now. So having said that, it does generate nice results, which we'll see in a bit. So India Charlie Mike Golf. This is going to be 020 as the radial, again at 10.2. And then finally we've got one more, which is India Charlie Mike Golf 040, and that's the point just before we intercept the center line. 040 at 10.2. Bosh. There we go. Right, last thing we're going to do is next page, grab that previous page, do that, clear the discontinuity. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my plan again, I'm going to go to the next page, and we can follow our route through. So we've got centering on that, step, 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 and it all looks good at the moment. There is going to be an issue, I think, in a moment, and I will explain why it is. So that's our little dog leg that we had to manually enter, and this is our DME arc. Now we can see there's a bit of an issue here. The DME arc, CIVDA, is a bit of a pain. So what we're going to do, pick that up, drop it there. You get a dotted line when it's something you haven't executed, and you get the option to erase that change. So if we erase the change, for example, you can see it goes back to where it is. So that makes it a little bit better. So we're going to execute that, and you can see we've got this kind of dog leg. Actually, what I'm going to do to smooth it out, I'm going to get rid of Banto as well. And you should be able to see if we zoom out, it's got a much straighter line into the DME arc. So we will accept that. Okay, so that's pretty much the route in terms of the LNAV route. The key here is you can see that we've got no VNAV route. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue on from where we were. So in terms of weights, zero fuel weight is automatically calculated by pressing that button. We're going to put 5 tons in. Cost index, just a random cost index of 25. Cruise altitude are going to stay quite low, flight level 210. Now thrust limit, all preset there, we're going to leave it at full, so it's not a problem. Then on to takeoff, we're going to do actually a flap 20 takeoff, and you can see it's come up with the VREF buttons here and the CFG. All is good. Or is it? Let's just double check the VNAV page. 176 knot climb, it wants initially transition altitude 18,000. Actually the transition altitude for the UK generally is 6,000. I haven't checked the charts on this, but generally it's 6,000. You can see it's adapted to say that we've got a speed here, and this is the VNAV best calculated speed down here, which says below flight level 100 the best speed is 266, and then the economy speed is 334 as we climb. However, that's too fast for the UK, so what we can do, this by the way is worked out from the database. You can't change the speed transition here. All you can do is put a manual speed restriction in. So let's just clear that, and we'll do flight level 100. Now the observant amongst you will have noticed we've got this issue here, this kink in the turn. The reason for that kink in the turn is if I go to the legs page, you can see our speed here is 250. Almost immediately we take off, we've got our initial point here, 710 feet, and it's at 186 knots, and then it's accelerating us to 250, and it just can't cope with this turn. So what we're going to do is just going to bring the speed down, 210, pop it there, see how we get on. So that's a much tidier arc for us to get round there, and you can see it's started to populate all the altitudes. In terms of the altitudes, let's go to the next page. You can see it's worked them all out. 4,000 feet again is a hard constraint. Now, one of the things I can do here, let's just pop the data on. You can see if we zoom in, and we'll put it onto plan. We don't want that one at the minute. So step, step. In fact, what we want to do is previous page. There we go. So you can see that we've got the data down here, 710 feet, and we'll step through. You can see it's worked out that we'll be 1210 or above. It's white because it's not the active waypoint. That's magenta because it is the active waypoint. Around to Detling, 26 miles from Detling. Again, 2,500 or above. This is 3,000 now. It's a fixed constraint, which is why it's bold. And then we continue through, and you can see where it's computed and worked out and interpolated the constraint, and we haven't altered it. It's not bold. Where it's bold, it's either a hard constraint or it's something we've entered. So we're going to do that now because there is an issue with this. When we get all the way down here, let's just zoom out a bit again. This DME arc, we need to be flying this at 2,000 feet, and we haven't got 2,000 feet here. We're well above 2,000 feet for most of this. So let's just go to the next page. Let's start, and we start working backwards in many respects, because a VNAV profile is worked out from the last point here. So the VNAV profile is worked out from here, 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 and so on all the way back. VNAV profile is worked out in reverse from a particular position. So what we want to do is we're going to just adjust it in reverse. So put 2,000 feet as the altitude, and we're going to pop it in there, India Charlie Mike 6 there, and execute that. And what it does is you can see it readjust the profile. Now what we can do is we can pop that there, execute that, pick it up, go to the previous page, we'll pop it in there as well, execute that, and we don't even need to execute every step. We can just change it all the way through like that, and then when we do it, you can see, go to the previous page, it started to work out all the altitudes for us. So at Daventry we need to be 14,010 feet. Now that's an interpreted altitude. It's something that it thinks we need to be at for that particular point in space to make that VNAV profile work. So there we go, that's pretty much it. We can go back to the takeoff page now, just check through all of our stuff here. Thrust limit, that all looks good, and that's us ready to go. And you can see how we've worked out how to do our map using all the facilities available. So apart from one thing we couldn't do, which was our airway to airway intersection, this appears to have pretty much done everything, and we have been able to alter speeds and altitudes etc. to make it comply with our demands of our flight plan. It did have some stuff pre-populated, and the other stuff that we've populated we've been able to adjust correctly to get what we want. Okay, we're just about to go. You can see down here the flaps are still running to 20 degrees. It takes them quite a while in this beast to get there. In the meantime, we'll just discuss what we've got. 166 V2 is set up. Flight directors, both flight directors are on and the auto throttles aren't. If you have the VNAV and LNAV set up correctly, you can pre-select these. They're not active yet. You can see they're pre-selected with Toga, LNAV, VNAV. The reason they're not active yet is because your autopilot's obviously not in. 4,000 feet is the final altitude of the last waypoint of the SID. Flaps just coming down to 20 now. If you look down here, one of the things with this aircraft, you do actually have 3 FMCs, well 2 FMCs, 3 screens I believe it is, not entirely sure, but you can now present lots of different information across the 3 of them, and they are separate, so you could go to nav data for example and mess around with this one. Likewise, you've got 2 routes available in the systems, and what I've got here is the takeoff reference page on one side and the legs on the other side, although to be fair I'll probably just mess around with this one FMC. However, they do show differently, and as you can see, as do the nav screens, the nav displays can have different information on them, which is all very nice. So without further ado, let's get airborne and see how this thing goes. So brakes off, bring the throttles up. Engines take quite a while to spool up. Brakes off, Toga, and you can see thrust reference and Toga both green. It's quite a heavy bird, so it does take a while to accelerate, but once it gets up to speed it goes pretty darn quick. Slight wind from the left, so we're crabbing a little to the left there. Let's straighten ourselves out. 80 knots. Pretty quick at 166 for our rotate. Oh, sorry, V2.
V1.
V1.
Rotate.
Pull the magenta line. Positive rate gear up. So we can plug the automatics in and watch what happens now. Make sure we retract the flaps as we go. Quick check, flaps are fine, gear is up, all is good. Now on to thrust reference. Thrust reference basically means the throttles are managing power, not speed. LNAV and VNAV speed, LNAV following our lateral course. VNAV speed means the pitch of the aircraft is controlling the speed. With the takeoff, what happens is basically it sets a throttle power and then that's it really. Now the first altitude we were expecting was 3,000. Let's see what it does here. It doesn't appear to be levelling us. It's not leveled us. It's gone through 3,000. However, having said that, the constraint was 3000. This isn't a hard constraint, this is just literally a at or above 2500. So we'll see what happens. VNAV's gone to altitude, throttle is now, the power levers are controlling speed, and we're getting a nice turn on. Let's get the range up a little bit. So, yeah, we've got up to 3900, which is a bit of an anomaly there. It should be recognising the first constraint altitude and flying to that. Likewise, our constraint for this turn was 210 knots, so we're gradually exceeding that. In fact, I think the constraint for this one was 210 knots, so it's not a problem. But we're coming back down to 3000, which is not the normal behaviour. However, round we go. And we're away. That's us. So as I say, it's recognised that this next constraint now is 3000 feet, needs to be at it. It's captured it. We did have a balloon in here, but having said that, we're fortunate because the none of the points said at or below. We only ever had at or above, and we've made this turn nicely now, predominantly due to the fact we had a speed constraint before the turn. So what I'm going to do as we go is I'm going to edit it to cut it down in terms of size, because we don't really need to be watching Gatwick go past at the moment. So the next point is Detling 36 at 3000 feet, and then we've got to change to a hard constraint 4000 at Detling 43. So what I'll do is I'll cut, as I say, between the various bits where the aircraft's not really doing anything. We're at our 250 and we're heading towards Detling 36, so I shall speak to you in a moment. Okay, so we're starting to approach Detling 36. What we've got is, the first thing is we've got an altitude change here, 3000 to 4000, so we'll see how it performs with that. At the moment as well, you can look at the FMA, the enunciators. We've got speed being controlled by the auto throttles, LNAV, and then VNAV path. VNAV path means the vertical profile is basically being driven to follow a line. So whereas previously the pitch controlled a speed, now the pitch is controlling, if you like, the line in the sky, the geometrical pattern of that line. So, however, we've got to a climb, so you can see it's changed to thrust reference for the auto throttle to set a power setting, and then we have VNAV speed. You can see the little eyebrow now is coming down to tell us what altitude, sorry, what position we're going to be at. 2,500 feet. But in this thing, it tends to go quite quickly, and you can see already it's switched back to auto throttle controlling speed and VNAV controlling path. The only thing that's of interest there is at that point we've gone beyond our 250, which, if you remember, is the 250 below 10,000 feet that we put in, below flight level 100. However, it's regained it. So obviously what's happened is, as we've gone through the changes in terms of profiles, the auto throttle systems had a little bit of a hiccup with it. Nothing too major. But there we go, we're now level for Detling 43. So we're going to have a couple of looks. Now that we're levelling the cruise, we'll have a look at a couple of things. Let's say Octad, we were to report within, when we were 25 miles from Octad. One of the things we can do is we can go to the fix page, and we'll just have a look and see how this does. So Oscar, Kilo, Tango, Alpha, Delta. The first thing you do is you put your fix in. This isn't point bearing distance if you go into the fix info. So you've got Octad, tells us where the location is, the bearing and distance for it. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, we want to know when we're 25 miles from it. So if I do /25, boom, you get a 25 mile ring. I could also do /15, and I could do multiple rings on it. So you've got a 15 and 25 mile ring. If I want to get rid of it, all I have to do is click Erase Fix and it disappears. So out to our left, you probably can't see it at the minute, but we have Wotan. It's an off-route fix, it's over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go Wotan, and there's a couple of options we have. Let's assume that this is an off-route fix, because it's not on our route, you see here. ATC might ask us to be flight level 230. a beam WOTAN, or they might ask us to report passing WOTAN. We can do a beam and just click that, and what you can see there is we have WOTAN, we have a beam point, and if I zoom in on this, not too much, you can see it's generated this line to tell us a beam, and what we then get is information about the beam point. In terms of the legs page, because it's an individual fix that we put in, it doesn't change the legs page, but there we go, so that's fine. What we can also do is delete that, so we delete our beam point, and we could say I want to know when we're on the 020 radial. So what I can now do is go 020 slash, pop it in there, and you can see you've got the 020, and you could also do as many as you want, so 040. I say as many as you want, you can have a couple of them really. Because if you go to next page, what you'll find is it actually goes to the next fix. So I haven't tried 3 or 4, but there's, you know, the circumstances where you'd need to do so are very limited. And you can see it's telling us we're on the 020 radial and the 040 radial. It's nicely informed us of that, and you can see octad, our next turning point, up there. And obviously if you want to get rid of it all, just click erase fix and it all disappears magically. So that's where we're going at the minute. So the next thing we're going to do, now we're past Ugnus, is we're going to do a direct intercept to Telba. Easy way to do that is to go like that. Now you can see if I zoom out, what it's done is it's drawn a dotted line quite correctly. The dotted line is to tell you if you execute this, which we haven't, if you execute it, that's where we're going to go. The other thing we're going to do now is you can see it's come up with this option of a beam point. So we're going to click a beam points. A beam points are selected. Then what we do is when we click execute, it does our route. Now look at this interesting fact down here. It's done this quite correctly as well. It's got oct01, and if you look at it, it's also on our route legs page. What it's doing is it's inserted into our flight plan, into our legs page. If you remember, let's just pop that there. Right, there's Brecon over here. No, I forgot which one of these it is. Octad is over here somewhere. So what it's done is when we've put the beam point in, it's generated another waypoint, which is octad, and that is a beam on our track, a beam octad on our new tracks. Octad is somewhere over here, and what it's worked out is that our original fix is over here, our new track is this, and when we are beam our original fix on our new track, it's this point here, and it's inserted in the FMS. So that is absolutely spot on. It's something you should be able to do in the cruise, and we've been able to do it, so yeah, happy days. And we'll just go direct to Telba now. One of the reasons we're going to do direct to Telba is to see if we can do a offset route. So offset route, what we need to do is go to the route page, next page, here we go, and down here you see we've got a line that says offset. So in order to do an offset, we want to, let's say we want to offset, let's increase our range here. So let's say we want to offset 10 miles to the left, we will go left 10, pop it in there, and you can see what's happened now is it's populated this route with a mile that's 10 miles offset to the left all the way. And so if we execute that, you can see our new route, and the aircraft is going to turn to intercept that new route. Now one of the things you'll notice is it keeps the original route in the solid magenta, and it puts the new offset in the dotted dashed magenta, which is absolutely fine. And then what we have is it just retains the details of us being offset here, and if we go into the legs you can see it's still got the same flight plan. There's nothing untoward has changed there. So yeah, a nice little feature. So in effect, as I said in the intro, imagine we've got a big wodge of cloud here. You'd probably offset by further, but imagine you've got a big wodge of cloud here and you want to offset your route and you're going to fly your route. So what we'll do is we'll let it just do its own thing for a moment. And you can see now that we're starting to leave our route to go and intercept the new route offset. There we go. So useful feature, and it does that exactly as the real thing does. So you can't do a route offset from the legs page, you can only do a route offset from the route page, and you can see that it's recorded here that it's got a route offset here. There's a couple of ways you can get rid of the root offset. One of the easiest ways of doing it is simply to do direct intercept, and you can see here we've got a little warning down here that says we're flying an offset route. So really useful feature, and you can see literally all we're going to do is intercept this, and then we're going to follow the dashed line instead of the solid line. Instead of waiting around for that, what we're going to do is just zip ahead by the magic of editing. So welcome back, guys. You can see we're on our direct on our offset route here to the left. A couple of ways of cancelling it. You can either just clear out this line here on the 6 right, or you can do what we're going to do here, which is we're going to go to legs, and we're just going to do a direct intercept, and you can see that it's going to take us to Staffer here. So let's execute that. You can see it's turning us in. And then if we go back, one of the things we can do here is next page, and we'll just clear that. So get rid of that, execute, and you can see our nice dotted lines vanished as well. And we're going to recover back towards Staffer. Just as we turn in, let's just turn the range down. We don't need 80 miles range now. So you can see at the moment what we've got is a lot of the features that are in the real life FMC are here. So you do have the ability to do route offset, you also have the ability to do direct intercepts. In addition, you have the ability to stick nice little green circles and green dashed lines for fixes everywhere. You've got the ability to do beam points. So you can do a beam points and fixes in relation to either a manual fix that you put in, or if you do a direct intercept, you can do a beam point for an existing route that's in your waypoint. So all is currently quite good. The next thing we need to look at is holds at present position. So let's say we're going to hold, and we're going to hold at present position, which is down here. It gives us the details here as to what we're going to do. We're going to do 029 right turn. Actually what we're going to do is we're going to do 010 as our inbound heading, and we're going to do it at left turn. Leg time 1.5 minutes, so inbound goes there, leg time 1.5 minutes, we're going to do it to 1.0. So change that to leg time, and then we execute. And what you'll see is immediately down here on the navigation display we get a hold pattern. One of the things we need to do now is we need to monitor our speed. So our target speed is going to be 210. Bring the fuel burn down. You can hear the engines change automatically now as our speed is reducing. We're turning back into the hold. Now the interesting thing here is it's deleted, well not deleted, but if I go back into the legs, it's now got a discontinuity deliberately put in between where we are and Staffer. It recognises this as a hold at this location, north 53, west 03. It's just a limitation of the number of digits in the boxes, why it's not gone all the way across more than anything. Because obviously what you don't want is a list of digits that then meets up with this digits here. But you can see the speed 210 at flight level 210 is what we've requested, and the speed is gradually coming down. And as we come down, you can also see here that this is our selected speed. So as we go with our flap schedule, it gradually starts to come down towards our desired speed. And we're turning in, and we're going to watch what its hold behaviour is like. So hold, if I go here, obviously the hold page, it's only got one hold. It would have a second hold if there was an element of a hold already in the system for whatever procedure we were doing. And the thrust's coming back up. We will put another stage of flap down just to give ourselves a little bit of clearance. Now what it's actually doing, if you look at this now, is it's coming back round and it's going to re-intercept this point. There was actually no need for it to do that, because we could have just turned immediately and gone straight into the outbound leg. But I don't know why it's doing this. To the best of my knowledge, it shouldn't be doing this. So yeah, a little bit interesting there. What it should have done is gone into a direct entry inbound hold. So basically what it should have done is recognise, well, if you want the present position, all we need to do is immediately turn onto the outbound leg here. Instead what it's done is it's come in and it's done almost a teardrop, as if it's obsessed with getting back to this position. Now in real life what it should be able to accomplish is just going straight into the hold, because obviously this big S-bend type behaviour isn't particularly good. And now what it's done is it's put itself into a position which is a little bit more awkward, where from here you would be wanting to do a parallel entry. So this would be assuming that you've come from down here towards the hold, and what you would do is you would then parallel this route. You'd go down here for a minute, and then you would turn around and come all the way back round like this, which seems like a bit of an odd hold when you've got this opportunity to do a straight in here, to do a direct entry, which is this sort of hold, and it should be able to do a direct entry, because literally when you execute the present position hold, you're telling it we are over our hold reference point. You've given it a direction, it should be able to do it immediately. So what we're going to do is we're just going to watch what it does with this and see. We'll see whether it goes into a parallel, which would be the correct one from that position, or whether it goes into a teardrop. Yeah, it's going to do a parallel hold entry. You can see it's levelling out now. So what it does with parallel hold is it will come out here parallel to the inbound track. It will get 1 minute out, and then it will do a turn round, back in, and it will come all the way round back towards our reference point. So if you imagine what we've done now is we've come in, our reference point's here, we've come all the way around, we've come back to our reference point, we've gone out parallel, and we're coming all the way around again back to our reference point, whereas all we needed to do was just do an oval. So it seems somewhat odd in terms of its behaviour, but it is trying to do it. So we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. What we're going to do now is, I'm not going to go and do a complete hold. We'll see what it does in terms of its behaviour now. So it's flown outbound. It's coming back round to do its thing. Meanwhile, what we'll do is we'll just have a quick look up here. Okay. So in terms of the details, obviously you've got your origin for it. The quad and radial is if you wanted to hold in a slice. If you imagine around the fix have slices of pie, if you wanted to hold in a slice of pie, you would choose quad and then radial. The inbound course and direction is what we've just programmed, so we wanted inbound course 010 with left turns, so that's 010 with left turns. Leg minute, normally you would have 1.5 minutes above 14,500 feet. It did default to that, we've manually changed it to 1 minute. Alternatively, some holds have distances as opposed to times. So for those you can program a leg distance. In terms of up here you've got the speed and target altitude. We did manually change our speed to 210, which you can see is what it's adopted. The fix ETA is the estimated time of arrival next time round to the fix. Hold available is an interesting one. That tells you the time available that you've got left with your current configuration, speed, fuel, etc. that you've got for that hold, and the best speed is your manoeuvring speed for that hold. So as I say, we should come back round with a teardrop and re-intercept this. We'll see what it does. You know, this is going to be a minute or so. Now in terms of getting out of holds, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can click exit hold that's here, or you can do a direct intercept back on the legs page to basically say I want to go direct to a location. So obviously on the legs page, to do a direct intercept, all we need to do is move this up and it cancels out hold. If we zoom out again, you'll be able to see Staffer here. Now Staffer was where we had the tight turn, if you remember. We were going to do a tight turn back round, so what we will actually do rather than go around the hold is we will get back here and we will exit the hold. So let's just sort itself out. Yeah, you can see it's trying to do a teardrop. Now what it does with a teardrop, if I zoom in, it doesn't fly direct to the fix. What it does is it forms an intercept with the inbound course here, and then it will turn onto the fix. But what we're going to do is we're just going to basically exit the hold. So back to the legs page, take Staffer, chuck it up there, and you can see it just draws a direct intercept. Execute that. So back we are, coming towards Staffer now. This is the waypoint, and the query here was whether the FMC would be bright enough to turn us inside the waypoint to make this really tight turn. And obviously it's quite apparent it is too. Now between here and Daventry is a very short leg, so what we're going to do is actually we're going to try and see if we can do it. We're going to put in a hold, which is going to be Akapa. So what we do now, this is an off-route hold, so if we go here, so it's Alpha Kilo Uniform Alpha Akapa. Let me just check that. Yeah, that's over to the left, so let's put that in there. Then what we can do is we can put it in where we want it, which is Daventry. So from Daventry, between Honolly 1 and Daventry, so we want 049, let's say 090. 090 to the left. we're going to do it 1.5 minutes time. In fact, we'll do it 1 minute. And execute. Now, because it's an off-route hold, you can see the change down here is it's taken out this leg down to Daventry here. And it's taken out the leg down to Daventry on the basis of saying, well, after this manually input fix that you put in earlier in order to fix the route, you've decided that you want us to do the ACAPA hold here. So actually what we'll do is we'll give it a direct intercept. So what's the route there? Let's legs to ACAPA 049. So what we'll actually do, go to the hold page, and what do we say? 050 left. You see we've just changed the lineup. Now this is a direct hold. This is just straight into the hold here, so it should be able to do a straight in turn where it comes from here, it goes to ACAPA, and then it comes all the way around like this. And I'll be incredibly surprised if it can't do that, because I've literally positioned it in the perfect place for it. You can see it's going to turn left and come straight into this inbound leg. Legs page, you can see, as I say, it's added this discontinuity down here. It'll be nice to it when we come out. But we just want to see what it does in terms of its turns now. It is literally on an absolutely spot on inbound leg. In terms of instrument holds, you're not going to get any better than this. It's intercepted the 050 inbound, as you can see. It's got its waypoint picked up, ACAPA. It's all set to go. The speed is there. You can see the speed's coming down quite quickly now. Actually, it's trying to intercept this with the right speed. However, it's coming in a bit fast. Turn round to the left, and this is where it should absolutely nail the outbound leg. It has no reason not to nail the outbound leg. If it does this silly P-shaped turn again, I'll be most surprised. It's certainly not what we want. Do as we ask, do as we ask. It's looking promising though, isn't it? It's looking promising. So there's, as I say, there's three holds that really this thing ought to be able to do. It ought to do a present position hold, which of a fashion it had a go at, but it made a bit of a meal of the entry to it, and there's no reason I can see why it shouldn't have done it properly. It should be able to do an off-route hold, which is what we're doing. With an off-route hold, what we mean is holding at a waypoint or a position that is nothing to do with your actual route. And then the final one is, why is it going back up to 250 speed? If you look at the speed demand here, it's going back up to 250. Why is it doing that? Why on earth is it doing that? That's just ridiculous. Shouldn't be doing that. Let's go back into the hold. Yeah, target speed 210. There's absolutely no reason why it should be roaring off towards this speed here. Absolutely no reason at all why it should be doing that. Very bizarre. Let's do hold and altitude, bring the speed down manually. Should still follow the LNAV profile. It's turned quite tight inside. However, it is going to follow the outbound leg now. You can see as soon as we slow down and take the throttle off, the hold time available comes down quite rapidly. The thing with a hold is there's two different speeds really that an aircraft really wants to fly at. One is the speed that keeps you in the air for the longest, i.e. the smallest fuel burn for a time. The other one is the speed where you make the most distance for the amount of fuel you burn, and they are not the same speeds, which is generally why a hold speed is much slower than a cruise speed. Because in effect what you're doing is, one is relating to fuel burn in terms of the outright fuel that you burn per minute, for example. The other one relates to how much fuel you burn for each mile you cover, and they're not the same. It's dependent on the lift drag profile of the wings, the weight of the aircraft, etc, etc. So there's an awful lot to it, but fundamentally what we're doing is we've brought our speed down for the hold. It also has the massive advantage that you hold in a much smaller area. So if you can imagine, one of the key things here is that we're trying to hold it within a confined area. If we're doing 300 knots, the radius of turn is directly related to the true airspeed of the aircraft. So the amount of distance covered by the aircraft through the air, the radius of turn, because we have a fixed turn in terms of our angle of bank. The faster we fly, the bigger this radius of turn. So as we come round, rather than mess around, go around the hold again, we're going to exit the hold. It should put us into a position where we're going to go back to Daventry. Actually, what it's going to do is it's not going to exit the hold until we get back to our fix. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we're just going to do this, take Daventry, pop it up there, execute, and you can see now we've got this lovely S-bend to get back towards Daventry. Okay, so you're just joining me again as I turn onto the DME arc. You can see the speed's nicely down to 185. I've got the go-around heading that I want, straight ahead, 231. At the moment I've got the altitude set to 2,000 feet. Probably intercept the glide slope before then, but we'll make sure we're down to 1,700. So in effect we're giving it the permission to go down lower should we need it. What I can do at the moment now is I'm going to bring the flaps down, so that as we come around the corner we're going to have plenty of flap. The only thing is it takes an awfully long time to run from 20 down to 30. So let's have a look at our descent in terms of, or our approach I should say, in terms of our VNAV. So it's still got that set up. Approach reference, here we go. 30 at 162, so actually let's just update that. Wind correction 5 knots, so we've got 5 knots in there, which is all good stuff. Still 2,000 feet, 185 coming around the corner. Now as you can see when I mentioned it earlier, if I bring the range down, it kind of straight lines these points, which is why we do the 10.2. So you can see we're on speed profile. We've got the ADF set up for Cambridge now, by the way. What we will do is go to the rad nav and we'll just confirm 111.3 is set up. So get that out of the way. In addition, what we're going to do now is we're going to arm the speed brake, make sure the auto brakes are all the way around to projected takeoff. So we're ready for our landing. We're going to do a full auto land with rollout. Don't need that now. What we'll do is we come around the corners, we'll wind off the speed, we'll come all the way back to VREF and we'll dump flaps and gear. So one more fix as we come around. We'll do actually is we will go to altitude hold, speed into V, we'll bring the speed down just a little bit more for that turn. Now it's coming around nicely. It should give us a nice nice approach fix. You can see it's got the go-around data here after runway through 23, climbing to 2,000 feet. It hasn't got a heading, so we can actually put one in if we wanted. However, what it's planning on doing is returning back to Cambridge, as you can see. So as we're turning in, it's all good to go. What we're going to do is make sure we've got the approach mode armed. Localizer's alive, you can see it coming in, and the glide slope's alive. Half deflection above. I haven't flown this aircraft enough to know when you can get the auto land in. I assume it's going to be on the glide slope. Nothing that random button clicking can't fix. And the glide slope's active. It's coming in now. Slightly left of centerline, correcting nicely. Don't need that now. Now we're descending with the glide slope. No idea why it does that. I wonder if there's an altitude constraint or something that needs to be complied with for the auto land. Ah, there we go, it's in now. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if it can do a rollout. You can see it's got rollout and flare pre-selected here. Land 3. Land 3 is fail safe. From what I remember from my studies, basically what it means is that because you've got all 3 autopilots in, if one of the autopilots were to fail, then the other 2 are capable of doing a fail-safe landing, which basically means that it's still in a safe configuration to land even if it loses an autopilot. So, max auto brakes, speed brakes armed. This is tense. See what it does? It's the first time I've tried an automatic landing in this thing, a full auto land. Hence the when's it going to actually engage?
500.
A little bit high, look. 1 red, 3 greens.
400.
Winds from the right, 10 knots.
300. 200. 100.
It's gonna be tight.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Come on, stop baby, stop. It's gonna be tight. I don't think we're gonna do it. Oh, we might do. Manual brakes, get rid of the reverse thrust. Oh, look at that. I don't think you can get a shorter runway for this thing. Stop, 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 stop. Oh dear. Oh well. Should have done more flight planning. Too heavy. But there we go. So I hope you found that beneficial, guys. Hope you found it interesting. I'm not obviously type rated on a 747. If I wish I were. However, you can see that in terms of systems, functionality for their FMC, there's literally only a couple of things that I couldn't get to work, and you know, that's quite remarkable really if you consider that this is a $60 aircraft. The PMDG 747 V2, when it comes out, is most likely, I would imagine, to be somewhere in the ballpark of the 777 they do, $135 odd, I would have thought. That's just a guess on my part, to be fair. So for $60, the functionality of this FMC is really rather good. The only couple of things we couldn't do is we couldn't do an airway-to-airway intersection when we were doing our pre-flight stuff. So, brake temp warning down here, look. So we couldn't do that, and let me think. The hold entries were a bit odd for the present position hold. Didn't seem to want to do a direct entry for whatever reason, which is bizarre because literally as soon as you press that button you're flying over your fixed position, but it could do everything else. Route offsets, it could do a manually entered DME arc, it could do off-route holds, it could do pretty much everything. It did a beam points, both in terms of the beam points for nominated points, where you put in a manual fix. It could do manual fixes with the beam points, manual fixes, just straightforward manual fixes with a bearing, and it could do manual fixes with a range where you get the nice little circle, green lines, etc. And it can pretty much do everything we wanted with the in the tests that I've done, with the exception, as I say, of that airway to airway intersection. So to be honest, guys, I'm quite impressed with this. all things told, as an FMC, the only other thing I had as an odd behaviour was the VNAV on departure, where it decided to try and climb up to 4,000 feet when the next constraint was only 3,000. A bit of odd behaviour, and you can mess around with the contents of it a lot. We did obviously have a couple of intriguing elements with this flight, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I found it useful, and as I say, it's not really a review per se. It's more just to have a laugh and see what this thing can do in terms of its modelling of its FMC. And actually, to be honest, it seems really good. Other aspects that you have available to it is you can have 2 routes, you can copy routes, and likewise if you get route data, then that's all very well and good. Perfin, it's all fine, seems to work very well. The menu has lots of other things in terms of simulation, so you can do load, you can save routes, for example, save panel states, panel styles, pushback if you want to use pushback. There's an awful lot more to this than just the FMC challenge which we've done. However, the main purpose for this was to do the FMC challenge and see how it got on, and personally I think it got on really well, so I'm more than happy with that. If I had this aircraft for long haul flightsim type stuff, it's got more than enough to help me out in terms of the avionics. So hope you enjoyed it, guys, and I shall speak to you soon. Take care.